Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world today. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us for this Fibre to Fashion webinar. Thank you for taking the time in your busy days. We're delighted to have such a diverse audience here to learn more about how to deal with the crisis in sourcing. My name is Mark Jarvis, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today's session is actually the first of a program of 4 sessions from Fibre to Fashion between now and the end of the year. In October, we'll be looking at sourcing diversification. In November, we're looking at the important topic of EU regulations, in particular in relation to sustainability. And finally, in December, we'll be predicting our forecasts and looking at an outlook for trade in 2026. But back to today. Over the next hour, we'll be diving into why the textile and apparel sourcing sector is in crisis, sharing insights, practical strategies, and perspectives to help you navigate the challenges and opportunities ahead. And at the end of this session, so stay tuned to the very end, please, we'll be making an exclusive offer to you where you can claim 25% discount off the price of a TexPro sourcing intelligence solution over the next 3 months. So before we begin, the usual little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded and we'll share with you the replay afterwards. Secondly, please feel free to ask your questions. Put them into the Q&A text box and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible at the end and indeed throughout this session. So we've got a lot of valuable content to cover, so let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today, Melindra Dadeja, who is the Vice President of Fibre to Fashion's sourcing intelligence solution, TexPro. Welcome, Milind.
Thank you, Mark.
So let's get straight to it, Milind. The webinar addresses the perfect storm that we're currently seeing in apparel sourcing. We've got huge volatility in raw material costs. We've got unpredictable demand swings. The margins in retail are being squeezed further and further. And we've also got, of course, a more value-conscious consumer. So from your perspective, what does this crisis look like on the ground, and which challenges are hitting sourcing teams the hardest right now?
Sure, Mark. So, as you rightly put forward, all of this in parts and pieces are adding on to the challenge that anybody in the apparel sourcing team is facing as of now. We would like to take them one by one, so I will like to show you something on that which I have prepared. So if we talk about major challenges which are there in the market, so firstly, we see that raw material prices have been very volatile, like you mentioned, right? So if we look at the prices over a period of time, we can see that the prices of cotton and polyester, which are the key two raw materials when it comes to garment manufacturing, is rising like anything. So if we talk about cotton, for example, in case of US Supima cotton, we can see the prices have gone up by 7%, whereas if we talk about China cotton, they have gone up by 2% as compared to the last year. Similarly, if we look at the prices of polyester yarn, this is just to give you an example. We can see the prices for China market has gone up by 6%, whereas in case of Pakistan, it has gone up by 15%. Same kind of trends are also being seen in other markets also. Now, this rises in the price is something which is impacting the profitability of apparel brands. The reason for that is that for any apparel brand, their cost of goods and sales is 50% of their revenue. And in that cost of goods and sales, 60 to 70% is cost of materials. So such kind of volatility in the raw material price is impacting their profitability, overall profitability. That is the reason it is creating a lot of crisis in terms of sourcing for apparel brands. If we talk about the second point that we have, which is regarding increasing cost parameters. So other than raw material price, we have other overheads also, which are an add on to the cost of garments. So if we talk about them, if you look at the wages, because garment is still very labor intensive sector, so the wages plays a very crucial role when it comes to total garmenting cost. So in all the key manufacturing countries, like for example, I have tried to cover this from different geographies, we can see that the wages have been on a rise over a period of last 5 years. So this is again adding on to the overall cost, and again adding on to the margin pressures to the brand. Likewise, the cost of electricity, industrial electricity cost is going up in all the key markets. As you can see, just to highlight, we have covered few countries over here. So you can see that clearly the electricity cost is going up. Likewise, the dollar is also getting strong. So it is good for a importing country that dollar is getting strong, but it has a conversely a reverse effect on the manufacturing countries, wherein the other cost goes up, the inflation goes up, the wages goes up, the material cost goes up. So overall, if you look at that, it is kind of a trade-off. Although their buying power increases in the manufacturing countries, but still the cost of materials and the cost of manufacturing will go up in those countries. And likewise, the inflation, as I said, in all major manufacturing markets, you can see the inflation is on a rise. This is again adding on to the overall cost of manufacturing in the respective countries. So on and all, we can see there is a very high input cost that apparel brands are facing as of now, and this is adding pressure on their margins. Thirdly, we have tariffs and trade policies. So of late, we have seen that tariffs have been very volatile. Just to give you an example, if we look at this table, if we are comparing the tariffs of key manufacturing countries, which were there in 2024 as compared to 2025, you can see there is a huge difference in terms of what we were doing in 2024 and what we are doing as of now in 2025. Again, this is adding pressure to the overall cost of the garments, and hence the margins of the brands, their profitability, even impacting their revenues also, top lines also. Thirdly, I would also like to mention on the freight rates. So basically, uh, initially before COVID, most of the manufacturers were working on CFR orders, CIF orders, but now most of the manufacturers are working on FOB orders. So the cost of freight is something now brands are majorly bearing the same. So of late, due to geopolitical tensions, due to pandemic, due to war-like scenarios, uh, there were a lot of congestions which happened. The demand of containers went up, and due to that, there is a huge increase in the cost of shipping. So this chart is something which will help you understand. So if we look at this chart, we can clearly see from here that the cost of shipping has gone up from $1,300 per 14 feet container to around about 3,600. Almost it has tripled in last 5 to 6 years. So this is again adding on to the troubles of apparel brands in terms of, because now they are the ones who are working on CFR orders, so they need to bear the cost of rates also. So this is what it is impacting them as well. Consumer demands. So as you rightly mentioned in your introduction, that consumer demand of late has been very volatile. Uh, After COVID, we saw that the demand rebounded, but with the inflation hitting on late 2021, the demand kind of become again sluggish. So consumers have become more conscious in terms of their buying, more value added products they are buying, and value products they are buying. Apparel buying has become very discretionary, and just to help you with some numbers, uh, you can see that if we compare the first quarter of this year as compared to the last year, specifically for America, we can see that monthly spending on clothing and footwear has gone down by 6%, which is very significant. And this is something we are seeing quarter on quarter, year on year trend. So one thing is for sure, due to the rise in the inflation in Western markets, the demand has kind of subdued in those markets, specifically for clothing and footwear as a sector. And also, lastly, now currently there's a lot of a trend in terms of fast fashion. So that is again pressing all the sourcing teams for shorter lead times. They need to have small orders and faster orders. So they need to speed to the market has increased what we were doing as compared to the previous years. So speed to the market has gone up. So that is again adding on to the woes of apparel brands who are already struggling with input costs and tariffs and trade issues. Now they have to also work on shorter lead times. So yes, this is to summarize like what sort of crisis we are facing as of now.
Uh, okay, Milind, thank you for that. You very articulate in explaining these six major challenges that the sourcing sector is facing. But I'm interested now to explore what are the reasons behind this crisis, and in particular, which of the challenges are being driven by macro
Mhm.
forces, and crucially, which are within the control of the industry.
So if we have to, I would say, categorize the reasons, I would say there are three main reasons or categories in which we can have the reasons for this crisis. One is macroeconomic root causes, which includes increase in inflation, economic slowdown, which is there, volatility in the raw material prices, energy prices, the cost of manufacturing going up due to the cost parameters which are going up, currency fluctuations, and also the demand volatility, which has kind of created a whiplash effect. So, like I explained, uh, in 2021, in 20, most of the retailers kind of uh, reduced their orders due to pandemic. In 2021, they kind of went ahead, and since there was rebound in the demand, they started ordering excessive orders to fill up their empty shelves. It kind of created an oversupply because by late 2022 the inflation hit the markets, and the demand started kind of contracting. So they have excess inventory, so there was a lot of inventory imbalance which happened due to the macroeconomic factors and the demand going down. uh, Secondly, there are geopolitical and policy-driven reasons also. So we saw a lot of global tensions which were there, political instabilities in markets like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and such markets. Due to tensions in the Middle East, there was lot of logistic congestions which happened, which increased the freight cost. As we saw that, and now. The regulatory authorities, bodies of various countries are becoming more stringent as far as compliance and sustainability is concerned. So that is again adding on pressure to brands in terms of not only to source now at a reasonable cost, but also to ensure that their products are sustainable and 100% compliance driven. So and thirdly, there are industry specific reasons also which were exposed in this crisis scenario. So we saw that most of the brands had their supply chain which was highly concentrated and fragile. The reason for that is they were only driven by majorly by cost reduction. So they were giving a lot of bulk orders to a single supplier in a single country for all their product categories. So that kind of impacted the supply chain because that was a systematic risk in terms of sourcing it from only few countries with bulk orders to major suppliers, which kind of made scenarios difficult for them when pandemic hit, or when any instability was there in the country from where they are sourcing due to political reasons or geopolitical reasons. They did not had immediate contingency plans or alternative countries to place their orders to, or secondary suppliers they can work with. uh, Due to all of this, there was a lot of inventory misalignments and bullwhip effect, which again could have been managed if I would say everything was properly, production planning was done properly. So they faced that, and the sourcing was not flexible because, like I said, that they were majorly consolidated on certain suppliers and certain countries for bulk of their orders. There was no flexibility in the sourcing, which again impacted their margins and orders that they place. And then fast fashion cycle, like I said, is again adding on the pressure. So these are the three main reasons, categories of reasons which are adding to this crisis.
Hmm. You've laid that out very, very clearly, Milind. I'm interested just to explore this a little more from a brand or a retailer perspective, and to understand how the sourcing and merchandising teams are adjusting what they're doing to protect margins and indeed to manage risk.
Sure. So, from a retailer's perspective, if you look at how they are trying to overcome them and what crisis they are facing. So basically, now they are more focused on sourcing strategy shifts. So diversifications, nearshoring is something they are focusing on. So what brands are majorly doing now is they are kind of de-risking their supply chain. They are taking their critical product categories not only from a particular country, but they are placing orders in multiple countries so that they are not overly dependent on a particular country for their entire product categories. Uh, Nearshoring is something which we have seen picking up, but I would not say picked up like what it was expected. It is still on a growth or nascent stage. But yes, due to the need for shorter lead times, we are anticipating that in coming times, nearshoring will definitely pick up and more regionalized supply chain. So it will be more of a combination. You would have offshoring, nearshoring, depending on the product categories and lead time. The planning will take that into consideration. Now many of those brands are doing dual sourcing, so they are kind of approving secondary suppliers as a replacement suppliers to their primary suppliers. So they are onboarding them in their systems. They are already doing all the required checks and audit checks and compliance checks to have them onboarded in their system, so that in case if anything goes wrong, they have already a supplier to which they can directly put in the orders and get those delivered on time. uh, Now they are also kind of working with their vendors as partners, so they are doing long term contracts, so even the vendors have visibility in terms of continuous order inflows. They can work on shorter lead times, very close to the seasons. They can place orders very quickly, could be dispatched. And also they can help them in their making their manufacturing more lean, more productive, more aligned towards their customer needs. And indeed, the manufacturers are also responding, so they are giving them better cost efficient deals. They can both of them can improve their margins since they have and visibility of future forward orders. They can plan their productions accordingly. They can arrange for their working capital finance better. And now large scale manufacturers are also opening up their factories or additional capacities in the regions or geographies which are nearby to their clients consumer markets. In terms of merchandising and planning, what we see is that most of the brands are doing now tighter assortments and fewer SKUs. So they are realigning their product assortments. They are doing away with the products which are not working. So they are working on specific product categories which are in demand, so that uh, they can focus on those demand and serve that demand right. And they can simplify their logistics and also the inventories, so which will help them improve their margins. Also, very critically, speed to market is something which is the best way to, I would say, mitigate the risk which is there in terms of uh, forecasting the demand, make the inventory levels lean. Because whenever you are doing demand planning or design planning very close to the season, you are tend to be right, or tend to be right as far as the actual demand is concerned. But for that, you will have to have your garments to be delivered within 4 to 6 weeks of lead time. So you will have to do with a planning of 6 months. So with that, you will be able to manage your inventory such that uh, I would say that there will be no understocks and excess stock. So there will be no sunk cost or extra inventory cost which a brand will have to bear. So speed to the market is becoming very critical, and also due to fast fashion, wherein you have smaller orders and more frequent, smaller order size and more frequent orders. Speed to market is something which is very important. So they most of them are working on that, and accordingly they are aligning their supply chain. uh, Now we see a lot of data driven demand and forecasting and planning. So they are using advanced analytics tools, AI based tools for planning and design and demand forecasting and designing, which takes into consideration their historical sales data, sales throughout, also social media trends, even weather patterns also. Based on that, it gives them better accurate demand forecasting, and which helps them in planning their sourcing accordingly. And with all of that, like I said, lean inventory. So now brands are more pressed in terms of having a very lean inventory. which they have seen in the past, that how inventory mismanagement or misalignment were impacting directly their margins. So now they have gone very keen in terms of having a very lean inventory input, improved turnovers, so that they can improve their margins, and accordingly they are aligning their supply chain now. Uh, as far as to improve their margins, they are also pressing their vendors for better deals, costings per unit. So they are negotiating with them for longer payment terms, shorter lead times, like I said. And even the product development teams are working on tech specs of the samples and the products in such a way that they are doing substitutions of materials which is not noticeable on the consumer part, but which will add profitability to their product margins, and reduce their cost. They are also looking at improving the usage of space also in terms of overall garment. So yes, on the cost engineering part and even on the vendor negotiation part, they are working. Specifically for retailers, we see that they are more now keen in terms of emphasizing on their private labels, because that way they can command some greater margins as compared to the other categories. Pricing is something which is key when we talk about uh, this particular crisis and scenario, because pricing strategy has to be spot on. Uh, we have seen that in 2023, uh, most of the retailers have taken a price hike, and has passed on the cost to consumers. Um, whereas some of them did that same thing in 2024 also. But now we see that slowly the input material cost is kind of getting normalized, so very soon they will revisit their pricing also. So the pricing strategy has to be very dynamic, so that they do not lose any market share, also top lines also, right? So that is the reason they are working with pricing, and they do not want to even give an over discount also, which they cannot cover up afterwards when the cost kind of normalizes. And they are reducing the operational and other overhead cost also. So if you look at the balance sheets of and the financial statements of top retailers and brands in different geographies, you can see that, just to give you an example, in 2024 in US, around about 7,300 stores were closed by retailers, which is a rise of around 60% as compared to the previous year. So what they are doing is that they are kind of becoming cost effective. So they are shifting their stores. They are optimizing the store space that they have, doing away with the stores which are not doing good for them, or rather not turning profitable. And they are emphasizing even on the e-commerce also, so that they can command better margins there. And lastly, I would say for risk mitigations and resilience, they are building flexible supply chains. So when we talk about flexible supply chain, they are having kind of focusing on more suppliers, more countries to source from, so that they can very easily get the required order in shorter lead times. Also, we can see that uh, they are making the logistics also flexible. So we saw that, as I've explained before, that due to logistic issues, their orders were delayed, uh, the cost of shipping went up. So what they are doing is they are improving the logistic network, even that they are considering and planning in such a way that they are increasing the transportation modes also. They are onboarding many freight forwarders and logistic companies on board, rather than relying on just one, so that their orders are stuck, they have something as a fallback plan. uh, Also, they are investing heavily on the traceability and compliance, since now it has become something which was of paramount importance. So they want to have a visibility in their supply chain to the farm level, so that they can understand where the gaps are, and accordingly they can work on that, and ensure that the compliance is met at each level of their supply chain. Now, there is a cultural shift in the sourcing teams in terms of how they work also. So in their playbooks, they also plan for different scenarios. So let's say uh, in particular country, if there is any political instability, what they would do. In particular supplier, if let's say anything goes wrong, what they will do, what would be their fallback plan. So this kind of thought process have now come up in sourcing planning also. And as far as agile decision making is concerned, now the sourcing teams are more empowered in terms of decision making, that during a season, if some lines are not working, they can immediately stop those lines so that they can reduce the sunk cost. And if there is anything other which is in demand, they can immediately chase that so that they don't miss out on that. So that kind of empowering has been done so they can take decisions on the fly.
Milind, thank you for that. Very useful and thorough overview from the retailer's perspective. I'm interested now to explore um, how the manufacturers are responding and how it's impacting on them. I was recently in New York meeting a number of Fiber to Fashion's TexPro customers, brands and retailers. And of course, they're in the eye of the storm of the impact of the tariff changes implemented by the current US administration. And of course, it is having a huge impact on them. But they were also collectively concerned for their manufacturers and the impact that this was having on their manufacturers. Um, so perhaps you can just give us your perspective on how manufacturers are being impacted by the current situations.
Sure, Mark. So if we talk about manufacturers and how this particular crisis is impacting them, if we look at firstly the price pressures and the tighter margins, so already a manufacturer is working on a very small margins, and to add on to I would say the fuel to the fire, uh, the input cost for them as well has gone up. So like I said, due to inflation, their cost of manufacturing has gone up. In the input raw material cost has gone up. Uh, Also, most of this manufacturers face a lot of pressure in terms of finding finance for working capital. Since the lending rates have gone up in most of those countries, they are borrowing money at a higher cost for their working on the orders. Now, most of the brands are looking for longer payment terms, so they now the cost of capital and the cost of borrowing has gone up, so that is again squeezing their margins. So all in all, these are the things which are impacting the manufacturers in a very negative way, if I may say. So most of them are barely surviving. They are finding very much in terms of even for survival there are issues for them, right? That is on the supply side. But if we talk about on the demand side of it, so they do not have a consistent inflow of orders. The demand is kind of subdued due to the rising inflation and what we discussed before. Just to highlight that, I would like to show you a data. So if we look at this particular chart, this is showing me the US apparel imports and the inventory levels of top US brands from 2019 to 2024 onwards. Now, US is 25% of global apparel imports, so it's the big market when it comes to global apparel sourcing. Now, over here we can clearly see that there is an inverse relation, which ideally should be. So from 2021 onwards, you can see that the inventory levels, like I explained in the previous discussion, that after COVID, uh, when there was demand rebound, all the retailers, brands went ahead and placed excessive orders to refill their empty shelves. So that led to an higher inventory levels, which you can see over here, which led to decrease in the imports of US. So this signifies that due to the higher inventory levels, there was reduction in the orders across different sourcing countries, right? Which now has slowly started picking up, and then the inventory levels have started normalizing. But that was the scenario. So due to which they had a lot of issues in terms of uh, uh, inconsistent orders, volatility in orders, right? And tighter timelines, like I said, due to fast fashion pressure and shorter lead time, more speed to the market, they are pressed for times. The manufacturers are asking the shipments to be delivered in, like I said, very close to the seasons. They are planning and want their suppliers to deliver that on very short notice. And shorter orders, small MOQs, frequent orders. So again, the number of orders that a manufacturer is placing is going high, but the MOQ size is going down. Now, in terms of sourcing geography shifts, what we have seen is that definitely there is a diversification away from China. So, like I explained from the retailers' perspective, that now most of the retailers are kind of having a mixed strategy wherein they are not overly dependent on particular geographies for their major product categories and suppliers. They are now kind of de-risking it and making their supply chain more flexible. Just to highlight that, I would like to show you that some data, right? So if we look at the percentage share of countries like US, China, Central and South America, Africa, and Middle East, these geographies in the US apparel imports. This is the year-on-year data for last 5 to 6 years. So we can clearly see that the percentage share of China in the apparel imports of US has gone down by 13%. But if you look at Central and South America, which is the geography for nearshoring, it is almost stagnant, as you can see over here. So like that is something which we assume to go forward. So it has not picked up the way it should ideally have picked up. But now with the fast fashion and smaller orders and frequent orders and shorter lead times, uh, you will see that this the share of those markets are likely to pick up. Uh, as of now, we can see that countries like Africa, Middle East has picked up, right, in terms of their share in the US imports, apparel imports. US has signed many FTAs with those countries to kind of shift their sourcing to those markets. There they have labor arbitrage, they have currency arbitrage, they have more buying power. The availability of raw material is also there. So due to that, countries like Tanzania, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, Kenya, Ethiopia are something which is emerging as far as new sourcing destinations are concerned. Though their share is still very small, but we can see that it is on an upward trajectory. uh, there are free trade agreements which is giving advantage to those countries. Like for example, in Egypt, they have some arrangement wherein they have qualified industrial zones. So if any garment or any industrial product which is manufactured in that particular zone, it will be completely duty free to for imports into US. Likewise, for Central and South America, they have CAFTA DR free trade agreement with them, which is making products from those markets duty free. Similarly, if we look at Europe, we can see that even in this case, the dependency on China is going down. So from a share of 21.6%, it has now come down to 18.3% in the total apparel imports of Europe. Uh, Surprisingly, we see there is a downward trend also as far as imports within the Europe is concerned, which is nearshoring. So Eastern European countries are also kind of losing share as far as overall apparel imports of US is concerned, Europe is concerned. Partially, the reasons could be the rising cost of manufacturing there due to the inflation rise in Europe and the energy crisis which happened in Europe. The cost of manufacturing went up in the Eastern European markets also, which due to which we are assuming that the share of sourcing within the Europe has gone down. Africa is again over here also. You can see there's an upward trend over there. So yes, imports from Africa is improving and as having higher shares in the overall apparel imports of Europe. Middle East, however, is not picking up as when we talk about Europe. So nearshoring destinations like Turkey are not improving because in Turkey all the cost parameters have gone up very significantly, be it currency, be it their inflation, the cost of materials has gone up very significantly. So that has kind of reduced the dependency on those markets vis-a-vis other markets. Uh, Lastly, I would say that from the perspective of manufacturers, what they are trying to do is they are trying to make their production more lean, improve their productivity by having more automation so that they can reduce the overall cost of manufacturing. They are investing also in terms of becoming more sustainable and compliant driven so that they are more qualified and can be onboarded on more number of brands and meet their sourcing supply criterias. uh, they are also kind of vertically integrating also so that it kind of give them better input cost visibility, and also they are have kind of consolidating and nominating their vendors for their upstream also so that they have some sort of supply chain control. uh, like I said before, many of the large scale manufacturers are also expanding their factories in other geographies, which are nearshoring geographies, so that they can easily reach the consumer markets for their customers.
Milind, thank you again. I have one more question, and then we'll go on to some questions that we have received from our attendees today. But I'm interested, kind of looking forward, what do you see as the most realistic pathways out of the crisis, both in the immediate term and the longer term?
So majorly, I would say there are three blocks that I see in terms of way forward. One is structural changes which are happening in sourcing, so diversifying of sourcing footprints, and it will keep on going in near future and long term also. We will going forward see a combination of near and offshoring, so specific to product categories and the need of those categories in terms of their demand planning. Brand will plan their sourcing accordingly. So for certain categories where there are small MOQs and frequent orders, they might place larger orders in nearshoring countries. But for categories where demand or designs are more or less stagnant, they would still place bulk of orders in offshore countries. But still, what we have seen that is, even though China or any other market who has lost the share has been gained within the Asian markets only. So still, nearshoring is not picked up the way it was anticipated, but we are hopeful that going forward it will pick up. We'll see a lot of vertical integrations and supply chain control at on the manufacturers part. Manufacturers will become more consolidated in terms of the entire supply chain, and also they would emphasize more on lean manufacturing, more automations and advancement as far as technology is concerned. Talking of technology, more digital product development would be there, more collaborations, a lot of use of forecasting and analytics tools, AI based tools for supply chain management, production management, demand planning, and a lot of factory floor automation is something which is likely to happen going forward. As far as brand and manufacturer relationships are concerned, brands will now work with more consolidated group of suppliers across different geographies. Uh, they would kind of de-risk sourcing from a particular geography and have more sourcing basis, but will work with more consolidated suppliers so that they can groom them as per their needs. They can make uh, and command higher negotiation power with them, and in the bargain, the manufacturers will have more visibility in terms of future forward orders. They would have more time to plan their productions, arrange for capitals, working finance capitals, and thereby they can also improve their margins, and also the brands can improve their margins. So they will plan the capacity planning also. They will share the risk in terms of any risk which is due to macroeconomic scenarios or any geopolitical scenarios, and vertical collaborations, like I said. So these are the things which I think would go forward will play as far as once this crisis kind of slow down.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're going to move on and take some questions from attendees, um, which have come through to me here. So, firstly, um, it says here volatility, and you've been saying this, Milind, volatility has become the norm. How are these uncertainties and mismatches affecting global textile and apparel supply chains?
Uh, so in the presentation, as we discussed, it is not only impacting suppliers, but it is also impacting the brands also in terms of their profitability, in terms of the margins, in terms of even the top line growth also. See, firstly, like I said, the volatility is not only on the input side of the business; it is also on the demand side of the business. So even on the supply side, even on the demand side, both and we have the volatility. There is no clear picture even on the demand side and on even on the supply side. So input costs are going up, like I said, tariffs are going up, other cost parameters are going up. You have a lot of issues in terms of logistics, inventory management, and 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 on the demand side, you can see that the consumer demands are not also stagnant, or I would say in a consistent flow. So it is uh, off a bit, like sometimes it goes up, sometimes it go down. So there is no fixed pattern to consumer demands also, which kind of uh, is impacting the brands in terms of planning their sourcing, and hence they have the same impact on the upstream, that is manufacturers, and even the raw material manufacturers are facing that hit also.
Okay. Another question for you here. How have recent tariff policies reshaped global sourcing strategies for apparel brands?
As of now, what we see on the ground is that most of the brands, retailers are kind of in a wait and watch state of mind. No significant changes are there as of now to begin with. But let's say if this thing persistence and is there for a longer time, definitely you will see the shift in the supply chains and sourcing countries. But that would be case to case basis, and that would be based on product category. So nothing is going to happen overnight. Just to give you an example, for example, recently there are additional tariffs which were laid on by the recent US administration on India. Now, if I talk about certain numbers, let's say India, US imports from India, you have 70% of imports are knitted garments, right? So if the demand in US is consistent and it's the same, they will have to source that garments, right? So if, let's say, if a brand has no options to source from India for knitted garments, there are other markets that they need to explore, but they do not have the capacity to meet the demand. So, for example, Bangladesh is majorly into woven garments. Likewise, China is into woven and knits both, right? So, overnight, you cannot have installed capacities which will meet the demand which is there as of now in the market. Uh, but we are hopeful that things will turn good going forward. There are already negotiations happening between countries, and everything is kind of getting normalized very slowly. But if this thing persistence, there will be definitely for sure changes in the sourcing, but that would be again categories to category wise, product to product wise. So all the products are not going to get the heat of it. Certain product categories, certain segments, certain material types will for sure take a heat.
Okay, we've got time for one more question here. How can companies stay committed to sustainability and regulations even when budgets are tight? That's a very good question. Is it about finding cost neutral sustainability measures? Not easy. Or something else? Good question.
uh, See, they do not have an option to compromise as far as compliance and sustainability is concerned, because there are three reasons to that. One is uh, the regulatory authorities, the respective governments of various countries are very keen, and they're day by day coming up with more stricter and stricter regulations to make textile supply chain more cleaner, more compliant. Also, the consumers have become very conscious of the fact that how sustainable the products are that they are consuming or using, right? So the brands have to deliver on that level also. And thirdly, I would say the brands, some of those brands have also become very conscious of what they are manufacturing and how they are manufacturing. So one way or the other, they will have to ensure the compliance and sustainability, be it the crisis or not the crisis. This thing is something which will stay for there for a longer period of time. Now, talking about the way outs, I would say that they can work on some material combinations. So uh, I would say contemporary raw materials, conventional raw materials, they can have a combination in such that they can still meet their goals and have the same garment that with the same product specifications. Likewise, they can come up with some innovations in terms of working more closer with their suppliers to ensure that they are more certified, more sustainable in terms of achieving their goals and compliance goals, right? So they can work jointly with their vendors, and that is the reason they are going to work with more consolidated group of suppliers, so that they can effectively manage them and align them to their sustainability needs, which with a lower cost, right? So I think those are the things which I foresee going
Yeah.
forward. But for sure, this thing is to be there. They will not compromise on sustainability or compliance.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. And unfortunately, that brings us to the end of today's session. We've run out of time. So, Milind, I'd like to thank you for sharing your knowledge with everyone today. And I would say to all of you who have attended, thank you for your time as well. If you'd like to engage a little more and explore a little more what the TexPro Sourcing Intelligence solution offers, and by the way, all of the data that you've seen today was taken from TextPro. And if you want to learn some more about that, please get in touch. And as I was saying at the beginning, we're about to go to or give you the option to go to our special offer page. You'll be redirected there in a moment, where you can claim a 25% discount on a purchase of one of our TextPro solutions in the next 3 months. So I do urge you to go and have a look at that. It is a tool that is used by many retailers and brands and manufacturers around the globe, where they're able to have a material impact on their margins. So that's it for today. Thank you all again for attending, and I hope we'll see you again next month when we'll be running a second session, this time on sourcing diversification. Fascinating. We'll dive into a little bit more detail on that. So thank you. Wherever you are in the world, have a good morning, have a good evening, or have a good afternoon. Thank you.